How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today we're going to be talking about Hammer, House of Horror. This is episode 7, so the halfway point of the series, and this one's entitled The Silent Scream. It originally aired October 25th, 1980, and is directed by Alan Gibson. Now, Alan Gibson, if you're Hammer fans, he's the guy who directed some of the later Hammer Dracula movies. Dracula AD 1972 and The Rites of Dracula. This episode also stars Peter Cushing, Brian Cox, and Elaine Donnelly. And yeah, Peter Cushing. Peter Cushing is one of Hammer's biggest and most famous actors. You may know Peter Cushing for being Dr. Van Helsing or Dr. Frankenstein, but really he's been in a ton of Hammer's movies, and it's always great to see him again. And yeah, this is the Peter Cushing episode. They give him another good evil mastermind to play here. Really fun. Now, with this, my DVD, I have the Synapse release of the series, and I really do like this release. It's got all the episodes, as it says on the front. They're complete and uncut, or I guess it says it on the back. But anyway, one of the things I really like about this release is it has an introduction for every single episode. So a guy will come on and give you the high points and tell you a little bit about the episode. But one thing he said in the introduction to this episode was that this episode is often thought of as the best episode. And I guess I could see a lot of people saying that because Cushing's in this episode, and Cushing's great as always. But I don't think I would say it's the best episode. If I had to guess, I'd say Rude Awakening's probably the best episode. I think this is a pretty good episode, and obviously, yeah, Cushing, he's going to be great. But the plot outside of him is kind of cheesy and improbable. It really does remind me more of like older horror films, you know, like from the 40s and 50s, the old school concept-driven horror. This one is about this guy. He gets out of prison, and Peter Cushing saw him before he got out, says, "I know what captivity's like, I hate it too. Here's some money, come see me in my pet shop when you're out." So he goes to the guy's pet shop, and Peter Cushing says, "Come see what I have in my basement," and it's a zoo, but all the cages are open, and he says, "I know captivity sucks, so I'm creating zoos without cages. I'm training animals to just stay where they're supposed to be." And he says, "I want you to feed the animals while I'm gone." Now, while Peter Cushing's away, there's this big safe that's just way too much temptation for this guy. He goes to open it and steal all the money when a trap door opens below him, and he falls into a cage of his own. And now he's trapped there. And overall, I kind of feel like this episode is like the opposite of The Most Dangerous Game. The Most Dangerous Game was about hunting, and this one's about captivity. You both have an evil mastermind with this really elaborate plan, and in both movies you compare humans to animals and put them in that place. Yeah, I think the two are pretty similar, but it's that old school concept-driven horror. What if man did this? And really though, kind of an overly elaborate plot. You get Peter Cushing. He's in a town, and in the episode they say, the town's so small, how can it even have a full-time pet store? It's a town that small, yet somehow he's managed to create this pretty big underground zoo, and bringing in like leopards and stuff without people noticing. And plus the zoo is like automated, like a whole lot of it operates by itself. And there's also force fields, you know, kind of an electronic force field in this episode. And that's an electronic force field in a rural small town in England in 1980. That's pretty implausible. unless Peter Cushing brought it over from his time as Tarkin. But yeah, it's a cool, interesting story, and I like the concept and stuff. But I don't get saying this is the best episode of the whole series when it's kind of cheesy and implausible. It's still a good episode. I wouldn't say the best, though. But without further ado, let's go ahead and talk a bit about the plot. I'm not going to spoil the ending, so no major spoilers, but I do want to analyze the episode. I'll just be avoiding the end bits. But anyway, we open up with the pre-credit scene, and we see Peter Cushing going to his underground zoo. He flips a switch and all the cages come open, but the animals don't run out. They all stay there except for this tiger, and the tiger goes up to the door about to leave when it's struck by the electric force field and gets all zapped and it dies. And Peter Cushing's like, why? Why did you have to do that? Now cut to the present after the great theme song once again. I really do love the theme song. We cut to the present and we see this guy dropped off with a little pack right outside this country house, kind of in the middle of nowhere. And he runs towards the house. He's really happy and he sees his wife there. And you find out that this guy has been in prison for quite, not a long time, but a couple years. And he's finally out again and he gets to see his wife. And the two hug and they're just really glad to be with each other. And this relationship is actually pretty interesting. You can tell that the husband and the wife really do love each other, but this relationship is still flawed, and it's pretty much because he wants to go out and be a criminal. He's always looking to try to get ahead, and that's, ironically, trying to get ahead is putting them behind, and him being in prison for so long has caused great financial difficulties. The wife, trying to fend for herself, has not been in a great position. She said she actually quit smoking because she couldn't afford it and she needed to spend the money on gas for her car. She really wants him back. She's glad that he's back and doesn't want him to go out again on his life of crime. And he suddenly pulls out a big envelope full of money. And she's confused, like, where did you get that? That's more than I thought the prison wages would be. And he says, a man came to see me in prison. He said he survived the Holocaust, and he knew the horrors of confinement. And he gave me this money to help start me back up again, and says that I should see him in the city when I'm out. And the wife says, yes, you should see him. You need to go and thank him for this. So he goes to the pet shop and he meets Peter Cushing and he says, yeah, I related to you and I think you can help me out with something. And he goes to the back of the pet shop and goes down the stairs, and that's where the main guy sees Peter Cushing's giant underground zoo, in that all the cages are open but none of the animals are running out. And Peter Cushing says, I want to reinvent our concept of confinement. I want to create zoos without cages where all the animals just don't leave their area. And he shows him the system. Basically, the doors will be closed, and then he'll open up the doors and there'll be a buzzer sound. The buzzer means don't go outside, and there's a force field, so if you touch the outside door, you get zapped. And then there's a bell sound, and the bell means you can stick your head out to eat the food, but you have to wait until you hear the bell, and even then, you can't leave. Don't run out. Just get the food and then go back. And he's got all these animals trained where they'll open the cage doors, but because they don't want to get zapped, they don't leave their cages. So it's, open cages, but all the animals stay in. And he says, I want you to feed these animals for me while I'm gone. I'll be gone for a couple weeks. I need someone to feed the animals. And you're in a position to do this. A lot of the jobs that a guy would get just out of prison aren't gonna be the best jobs, I can pay you a little bit better, and I can write you a reference so your next job knows that you're trustworthy. So overall, a really good deal for this guy to take. He goes and he feeds the animals for a couple days, but then he notices that safe, and his wife goes, "Don't touch it. Please don't touch it. If you go to prison, that's gonna basically wreck up the place." And he's like, "But if I don't, I could get thousands of dollars out of this safe." And she says, "Yeah, thousands of dollars would be great, but it's not life-changing. You know, it's a couple months of comfort, and if it doesn't work, it wrecks the whole house. So, yeah, you don't want to do this." But of course he does it anyway. He goes to open the safe, and once he opens the door, the trap door opens and he falls into this cage. And that's where Peter Cushing comes and explains his plot. He's like, "I can treat animals and I can get them to behave, but it's a harder job to get a human to behave, and plus you." And you find out this guy actually was in prison a little longer than he was supposed to be because he tried to escape. He has a phobia of captivity, and he can't stand being in one place for too long, and it really starts to get in his head. And he goes, "Not only by treating you like the animals and getting you to do the same results, that not only proves a human can do it, but you're like the hardest human to tame, you know?" So he has him in the cage. There's a little box, I guess it's a dumbwaiter, and it opens up, and he has to learn the buzzer bell system just like the animals to get his food. And of course you get really good visuals of Peter Cushing looking down at this guy, being a good maniacal villain there. But you also get the wife, and the wife has to find out what happened to her husband. Obviously, he didn't come back home one night, and she has to kind of solve the mystery. Peter Cushing says, "Oh, he must have been lying to you. He never showed up and talked to me." And the police, when they hear that her ex-con husband is missing, well, are they gonna really even look too hard? They assume he's just up to some sort of mischief. So she has to solve the mystery. He has to try to see if he can get out, and Peter Cushing has to do his experiments. Overall, a pretty fun episode, and it does lead to a pretty solid ending, even if it is a little over the top. But that being said, we're talking force fields in 1980s small-town London. We're talking digging out a whole big underground basement zoo and smuggling panthers into pet shops when people aren't looking. Overall, just kind of implausible. The episode, like I said, is good enough, and it does remind me of classic 1940s and 50s horror, and I think it's pretty good. I wouldn't say it's the best episode, and a lot of people say it's the best episode. I think it's good, probably top third, but I don't think I would say the best, but it still is entertaining. And also, I've said it before, you gotta love Cushing. But yeah, kind of a throwback episode to old school horror. The opposite side of Most Dangerous Game, you know? So it is really interesting, and I definitely would recommend it. If you're only seeing the highlights of the series, this is the Peter Cushing episode. You gotta watch the Peter Cushing episode, even if it's just for that alone. Anyway, after that we have Children of the Full Moon, so we'll be taking a look at that next week. And I think we all know what that one's going to be about from the title. But anyway, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll leave a relevant playlist on the bottom. If you guys want to see more, you can click there and see more. This should be my Hammer playlist, where you can find some of my reviews for Hammer's classic monster movies. You can find some more obscure stuff, some collection videos. But also, in this playlist, you can find my reviews for all the past episodes of this series. So if you want to see me review the first 6 episodes, those will be in there as well. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. relevant playlist on the bottom. Have a good day now.